Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Mark Herschberg, welcome to the conversation today.
Thank you for having me. It is my pleasure to be here.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from Manhattan. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about what AI means for the labor market. You know, this is such a hot topic, something that's super important. I think it's on every leader's mind. You know, what does it mean for us individually, for our jobs, for the future of work as it impacts us? But what does it mean for our teams, how we lead our organizations, how we, staff, and how we project needs for the future. These are all the types of things we're going to try to unpack and explore together today. As we get started, I wanted to share Mark's bio with everybody. Mark Herschberg is a transformational CTO with 3 degrees from MIT and multiple patents in AI and cybersecurity. Mark has spent his career launching and fixing new ventures from startups to Fortune 500s, working in cybersecurity, digital media, healthcare, online marketplaces, and he's tracked criminals and terrorists on the dark web. Mark has also taught at MIT's famed Career Success Accelerator for over 2 decades, is the author of the Career Toolkit, Essential Skills for Success That No One Taught You, and creator of the innovative Brain Bump training app. He advises companies on technology and AI strategy. And that's just a quick overview. I mean, there's so much more about your background, so many things you've done and accomplished, but is there anything you would like to highlight by way of your background before we dive on in?
I think we got the key parts. So I am in the trenches, building technology, building AI, using it. But then I also, through my work at MIT and my book, focus a lot on professional development and the labor market and how we evolve as employees and workers. So it's really fun to talk about how these two worlds come together as AI affects it from both sides.
Yeah, it absolutely does. We get to learn how to utilize it as a tool. And I always say, certainly there's disruption when it comes to AI, and people are all scared and worried about how AI is going to displace workers. People are going to lose their jobs and whatnot. And I always say, what people really need to worry about is people who don't learn how to use AI as a tool losing their jobs, because those people become obsolete. If you don't know how to utilize it, then you're not going to be nearly as useful as someone who knows how to utilize it as a tool, because it is an incredible tool, right? But I think while it can automate tasks, while it can certainly make us more effective and efficient in spectacular ways, we still need people. We still need human beings for all sorts of reasons. And just like every other stage of the Industrial Revolution, every time we've had some sort of new innovation, some sort of new automation, we still need people, and we just open up new avenues for those people to do new cool things as the automations take over some of those tasks that we just don't need to do anymore, right? And so
Yeah, to that.
Go ahead.
And we'll talk a little later about how specifically you should think about how to evolve your role and use AI to augment what you do. Here's
Yeah.
where the comes in. You're right that technology destroys jobs and creates jobs, but they're not always equal jobs.
Sure.
And so if we look over history, farming is a classic example. Yes, we destroyed farming jobs, but we created factory jobs. And that transition happened over literally decades. And the ability to switch from being a farmer to being someone in a factory, and back then, 100 years ago, low-skilled factory worker, easy transition. But we've seen other areas where it hasn't been as smooth. You can look at toll booth collectors as a more recent example. Now, all of us are very glad we got rid of toll booth collectors because they created friction. If you've ever had to commute, many of us have, it was annoying. Yeah. Great, we got rid of them. Good for all of us, save for the toll booth collectors. And their jobs weren't coming back. It's not that they became more efficient toll booth collectors or more efficient milkmen or more efficient telephone operators. We just got rid of them. Now, here again, if you were a toll booth collector, it was unskilled labor, and we could move another unskilled labor job. You could be a Walmart greeter. When we look at technology, so here's a more recent example of kind of how things split. If you go back to 1995, the dawn of the dot-com era. You need a software developer, whether you were building a website,
Hmm.
whether you're building software, and you need a very expensive person. Now, we have evolved both. And in software, we've gotten a
Hmm.
lot more efficient. You can use far fewer people to build software. So that created downward wage pressure. That was counteracted by the fact that what used to be a $20 million project now became a $2 million project. And so
Yeah.
we got upwards wage pressure from, hey, let's do more of this. On the other hand, when you look at websites, once you build your website, and so I'm not talking interactive, I'm talking that front end, that marketing piece that your dentist office has, that a mid-sized accounting firm has. Once they built the website, it's kind of done. And so we didn't see increased demand. No one says, well, this is cheap. Let's build two websites. And so the cost of web developers that also got automated. You don't need a really technical person. You can now use off the shelf drag and drop software, but that's usually done by low cost people in Asia or Latin America these days because there wasn't that upward pressure. And so, what we need to recognize, yes, long term, new jobs will be created, but how quickly will they be created? What is the transition to those new jobs that may create friction for people to be able to switch? And will there be demand as our given jobs don't go away, but we get more efficient, reducing the number of people? Is there upward pressure saying we need more of this, or is it fixed?
Yeah, excellent points. Excellent points. And it's interesting, we've seen a dramatic shift, for example, over the last, well, like 50, 60, 70 years, say in the US, for example, as we look at the sectoral composition of our economy, from predominantly an industrial sector kind of look at jobs to now we're a service industry, right? Service sector, economy driven, 85 plus percent, I believe, types of jobs, financial service sector, tech sector, all sorts of service sector types of jobs, right? Some of those are still fairly low level, low skill level, remedial, easily replaceable types of jobs. But by and large, many of those types of jobs have evolved into like not the types of jobs that were so easily replaceable, say 50, 60, 70 years ago, right? And so in part, it kind of just depends on like the types of things you do. And you gave some great examples of some of those types of things that, yes, those are probably more replaceable types of jobs because they're super repetitive. They're, but do we need those types of jobs? Or can we, as a society, evolve past those types of jobs anyways? And should we evolve past those types of jobs anyways? Can we create better, more meaningful work for people beyond that type of work that's going to be more valuable for them anyways? And I would argue yes, like regardless of AI or anything, like I think we should have better work for people generally, anyways. And so but then it brings up all these other questions about reskilling and upskilling, and we don't want to just leave people out of work and destitute, and we want to give people opportunity, right? And so that's a whole other set of public policy questions and like all these other things as well, which definitely are important and need to be considered. But to rein it back into like talking specifically about labor market and labor force, absolutely, there's all these complexities as we think about like what does it really mean for the here and now? Like right now, if I'm a leader and I'm thinking about my team and I'm thinking about all these new tools, and let's say I have someone leave. So I had a team of five to do whatever needs to be done. And now I have someone leave, and now I have a choice. Do I fill that position or do I leave it vacant? And do we just absorb that role and do what that person used to do and just do it amongst the four people, right? And that's a choice that like everyone's making nowadays, right? Because in part we have so much more augmented capacity due to all of these tools that are available to us. And that in a one-off isn't that big of a deal, right? You were talking about one person in a one-off situation, but in the aggregate, across every team, across every company, across the whole economy, that's a lot of positions, that's a lot of jobs, that's a lot of opportunities that all of a sudden might be vanishing. And so that does become a big deal. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, let's talk about how this impacts both you individually and you as a leader.
Yeah.
We look at our jobs. We shouldn't look at them holistically, but rather break them down task by task.
Yeah.
Going by physics background, I think of unit vectors. When you
Mm.
think what you do during a week, there's a whole bunch of small things you do. You probably schedule a meeting because you have to meet with your peers. You might put out a report, and don't forget to put that TPS cover on it. You may come up with a big strategy. You might have a conversation with someone, make a decision. You really want to break it down to here's all the different things I do. And then look at each of those tasks and ask yourself two questions. How automatable is this? And how valuable is this? If you create lots of pivot tables, well, that's going to be pretty automatable. If much of the code that you write as a software engineer is pretty basic, that's automatable. Or a lawyer who's redlining a contract to find risky areas. On the other hand, some bigger things, the software design, how to interpret the pivot tables, and AI is getting better at, but how you then take that knowledge and create a recommendation for the client, that starts to get a little harder to automate. And then also look at the value. If we go to this lawyer example, redlining a contract, obviously very important. You need to catch issues, but that's not really what you're getting paid for. Yes, the client needs it, but the client really wants legal strategy and legal protection. And so you know that certain tasks like redlining contracts will start to get automated. That will free you up for maybe higher level, more important, more valuable options. So when you look at your job, you're going to look and say anything that is low value and automatable, that's going away. If it's high value and automatable, it may still go away. And if it's low value and not automatable, it's probably not what you want to be doing and not where the company wants you to spend your time. So look for those high value, hard to automate tasks. But then the second part of this is there demand for more? In that software example, well, we can always create more software, but we're not going to create more websites because I just don't need more. That lawyer who now moves from just mechanical redlining to legal strategy, great, that's valuable. But there's a limit to how much legal strategy I need my lawyers to give me. And so you can ask yourself as a shortcut, imagine if your team size doubled or everyone was suddenly twice as productive. Would the company say, if you're twice as productive, would the company say, fantastic, we can now deliver more value to our customers twice as much? Or would they say, well, now I can get by with maybe half of the team or three-quarters of the team and reallocate those funds somewhere else? And that's going to tell you whether those remaining value creation pieces have a lot more capacity, a lot more demand, or whether there's a cap, and that's going to put that downward pressure on your role, whether the employment or the wages.
Yeah, excellent points, excellent points. And so, and there's no like specific right answer to this, right? This is the kind of thinking and calculus that we all have to be going through to consider and ultimately what's right for one team, for one organization. It may be a completely different answer for somebody else. It is compelling to think about that increased capacity, though. And I know for me as an individual, I love the idea of being able to replace those low value, highly repetitive tasks, with now the strategic, high value, creative types of things that I would much rather be spending my time doing anyways. Those are the things that bring me energy, that get me excited. Those are the things that I would love to spend all of my time doing. Now, don't get me wrong, every now and then I kind of like being able to like relax a little bit and just do some basic mind-numbing work, to just kind of like pass the time. Like I think everyone probably enjoys doing that sometimes a little bit, but for the most part, I don't want to be spending my time doing that stuff. I want to be doing meaningful, engaging, complex work. And that's what these tools, that's what AI and that's what other automative tools are allowing us to move towards. And ultimately, then it becomes a question of like competitive advantage and each organization, do we have enough demand for our products and services to necessitate like the number of people we have with this increased capacity, or increasing the number of people we have with exponential capacity, right? Or ultimately, are we going to be reducing our workforce because of now we have this increased capacity? And these are hard questions, especially when we have value people, like when we have people that have been with the company that we really appreciate. They've made great contributions, and now all of a sudden we know maybe we don't need quite as many people. And this is why I do see, more often than not, a lot of these kinds of conversations happen around attrition. So someone leaves, and then all of a sudden we reevaluate, and we're like, do we really need to fill that position at this point? And a lot of times in the last year or two, a lot of people are saying, I don't think we need to fill that position at this point, because of these new, the new increased capacity. And I get it. I totally get that. But that also spooks people because then they see that and then they're like, ooh, is my position next?
There's an interesting secondary question with what happens when we eliminate some of these rotettes. If you're a carpenter, you like the carving and creating really nice, intricate pieces, the putting 100 nails into something, you don't care about that. You're very happy that you have a nail gun to do the basic part for you, or the rotating saw to cut things faster. But there's a wax on, wax off question. I think most of your audience is old enough to recognize that reference. The building up through the practice, that if I don't spend all this time building pivot tables or redlining contracts, am I truly able to get to that higher level thinking? Or did I miss something along the way?
Yeah.
And we'll take the classic example of calculators. Everyone was worried in the 1950s, oh, we're all going to forget about how to do math with calculator. Now, on the one hand, you have people like my peers in science and engineering, where we say, great, this is making it just so much more efficient for me to calculate very big numbers. Yes, I could do it by hand, but it's slow and I like doing this. On the other hand, we have people who have said, oh, I'm just using a calculator. I can't even calculate a 15% tip or a 20% tip in a restaurant. And so I'm going to rely on the calculator. And that's fine for the restaurant, but it also means when they might be listening to a political debate and someone talks about borrowing money and interest rates and what this does to deficit, they lack the basic math skills to be able to just say, this is the implication. Is this something I'm okay with or not? And so in both cases, we have outsourced the calculation, but the first group of people says, well, I still know how to do it. I just use it for efficiency. The second group says, I just don't care about doing it. And they've lost something in their overall capabilities. So you have to be very careful as AI gets more advanced. It's still, now we're talking LLMs, so they're still relatively nascent. Other areas of AI are more advanced. As it becomes more advanced and they start to really do eat away at this, and we can treat it like a black box, are we going to lose certain capabilities by not having the wax on, wax off?
Yeah. And I'm thinking, just as you were mentioning all of that, I was just thinking about some personal examples. And, I have a little bit of a coding background. I also have quite an extensive statistics background. And, but I've learned to become quite reliant on statistical softwares, and they're super helpful, right? I don't want to be calculating regressions or standard deviations by hand. That's ridiculous. I mean, why in the world would I be doing anything like that, especially more advanced types of statistical analyses? And then when it comes to coding, my goodness, the AI tools are so helpful in debugging and looking at codes and helping you develop and dealing with the basic stuff so you don't have to spend time on it, like all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so helpful. And I totally get though, like how having the baseline understanding really helps me dig in. So like if something's not working, if something's not the way it should be, I actually know what to do. And I know like how to go in there and like to fix it. But if I was relying on the tool to do it and then something didn't work, it wouldn't and I didn't have that background, I wouldn't necessarily know how to go in and fix it, right? I would just be so reliant on the tool. And I guess that's kind of what you're talking about. And so then, yeah, that does bring up the point that we're always going to need those experts. And for example, like Amazon, the Amazon fulfillment center warehouse, more and more automated. We have these robots going and finding stuff. You still need that. What do you call it? The robot technician guy. There's a term for that.
Robot technician,
Yeah,
someone
there's a
Paris.
fancy word for it. I can't remember. But anyways, but you have to have those people, right? Because things don't always work. No matter how good the technology is, it doesn't always work. And so now you have to have those people to be able to do that, who have like this detailed expertise. And yeah, it's just such an interesting way of thinking about these things. And you're absolutely right. Every time we have these advances, there's always the potential to lose something along the way if we're not careful.
And it's not always bad. Just to provide a counterexample, let's
Yeah.
go cars. 100 years ago, if you had a car, you really needed to understand how it worked. You had to
Yeah.
open up engine and turn the crank and make sure everything was just right. And they have advanced. Now, even if you go back about 50 years, most people who drove cars understood the mechanics of how it worked.
Hmm.
And today, cars are pretty advanced. In fact, even if you understand the mechanics, there's so much electronics, you probably can't yourself go in and fix it. And for the most
Nope.
part, that's okay. I have enough engineering background. I know how cars work, but boy, if I really had to take apart and repair an engine, I'm out of luck. But that's okay because cars have become such a black box that for the most part, I don't have to worry about that. And I can change the oil, I can put in gas, I can put in wiper fluid as needed. For anything more advanced, like realigning the brakes, okay, I can take it to a technician and that's sufficient. Now, even so, we do know that certain people, race car drivers, they don't just say, well, I'm very good at driving. They really do know how to take apart that car. They know every bolt on it because they're trying to get the high performance. And they, in their specialized area of high performance, they need that knowledge that you and I don't need just to drive the car to and from our office.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Great example. Well, Mark, this has just been a really great conversation. We've only scratched the surface. There's a whole lot more to discuss, but we've started the conversation. As we wrap things up for today, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, where they can find your book, and then give us a final word for today.
Two places you can find me. First is on LinkedIn. So linkedin.com/in/Hershey, Hershey, or just Google my name and you'll find me there. And I'm very happy to talk about what you're trying to do in AI and what challenges you might be facing. For my book, the website is thecareertoolkitbook.com. If you go to that website, not only can you see the book, which is available on Amazon and in bookstores, but you can also get a whole bunch of resources. I write weekly articles there. So if you go to the blog section, you can see a bunch of articles and you can sort by category. Maybe you want the networking topics or the leadership topics or the technology topics, because a lot of what we've talked about, I have a number of articles that go much more in depth, how to think about this, how to prepare your career for it, how to bring AI into your company safely and effectively. So all of that is at thecareertoolkitbook.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mark. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Mark can do for you. Check out the book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.